times say lot word when you word to track.
The one stat wonder. A build concept where all of your stats are at 8, so a -1 modifier except for one of them. Now in D&D 5e, this was really only possible picking Constitution as your one stat, and we did that build. But now in the D&D 5.5 or 2024 Player's Handbook edition, we are looking to do this again, one build for each stat. So what does a Strength one stat wonder look like? Without further ado, let's get into it. Now in D&D 5.5, Strength is used for our AC if we're using heavy armor, our melee weapon damage, and for our grappling. Those are the three main things that Strength is going to do for us, so this build is going to focus on those. Now the reason in D&D 5e that Constitution was the only stat that you could really do a one stat wonder build on, that was because Constitution is HP. It is our hit points, it is what every character needs to, not die. In D&D 5.5, this can be solved in a couple of different ways, but this is one thing that the build needs to address before we really get into it. Now, the main way we're going to do this is through our background. We are going to pick up the Farmer background, which gives us the stats to where we can invest our points into Strength, which is what we're going to do with this build. We are going to assume that we invest points into Strength and nothing else, starting with a 17 in Strength and all of our other stats at 8. This is super unlikely for a character, but we want to do this for principle. Farmer also gives us Tough Origin feat. This gives us a +2 HP per level, or equates to it, basically it takes us from an 8 Constitution up to a 12 Constitution, which is a significant improvement. Now for our species, the one I am looking at is Orc. Orc is actually really good for a strength-heavy character because it allows us to mitigate our hit point problem through Relentless Endurance, allowing us to drop to 0 once before we are knocked outright. And second, we get Adrenaline Rush, which is really great, giving us a bonus action dash and a little bit of temp HP. But the reason I like Adrenaline Rush is Strength is mainly melee focused, so Adrenaline Rush is really great for helping us close distance, which is something melee characters sometimes struggle with. Now for this build, we have a couple choices of our class. We have Barbarian, Fighter, Paladin, and even we could do Ranger. But these are the 4 options that I see as somewhat plausible for a strength-focused build. Now Ranger is firstly out because it doesn't have heavy armor, which is what we really need, and secondly, it is also kind of wisdom-focused, so Ranger we're going to put aside for now. Barbarian also doesn't have heavy armor, and with a -1 con and a -1 dex, our AC is going to be terrible with or without medium armor. And while we could do a lot of damage with the strength-heavy Barbarian, like most Barbarians, I think this gives us enough of a weakness where it's not for us. Paladin does get heavy armor, however most of its abilities and subclass-oriented features are based on Charisma, and where we don't have Charisma, this one is also out for me, leaving us with Fighter. Fighter gives us heavy armor, it gives us martial weapons, weapon mastery, it gives us so many features that are all perfect for Strength in a strength-based build. Now that we've decided Fighter though, there is a branching path here, and that is because we can either go in one of 2 routes. The first route I see is a character that is a kind of a glass cannon. We deal a ton of damage, but we are not super focused on our armor. We are more focused on just dealing damage and blowing people apart. The other side of this is we go for the AC tank, using heavy armor, using a shield, using defensive playstyle to be an AC tank and be a tank for our team. I see these as the 2 different playstyles. Both of them can utilize grappling in different scenarios, but both of them kind of have their unique niche, and we're going to go over both of these. First, for our super AC tank strength one stat wonder, we have a build that is going to be a more classic fighter. We have heavy armor and we take the defense fighting style. This is going to give us a 19 AC once we have plate armor, which is just really good. Add on top of that a shield, which we're going to use, and we're up to 21. Without any magic or anything on there, we are at a 21 AC, which is great. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to use the long sword and use its weapon mastery sap. This means that when we hit a creature, they have disadvantage on their next attack roll. So if we hit an enemy and they attack us afterwards, they have disadvantage, taking our 21 AC to about 25 effectively. We're still doing good consistent damage, and this high AC makes our HP last a lot longer. Now at level 3, as far as our subclass goes, we are going to pick up Battle Master. Battle Master gives us a ton of maneuvers that are going to help our defensive playstyle while also upping our offensive capabilities. but we're going to focus mainly on being a super AC tank, so we're going to be super defensive. The other thing that these maneuvers are great for is that the saving throw that our enemies have to make is based off of our strength, so it is inherently going to be quite high. The three that I'm looking at that are just generally good is going to be goading attack, which convinces our enemies to attack us instead of our allies, which synergizes with our sap weapon mastery. We have menacing, which does a similar effect but with the frightened condition if we want an enemy to stay away from us rather than come towards us. And we have disarming attack, which is a niche pickup for enemies that have weapons. The one I'm really excited for this type of build is riposte. Now riposte is when an enemy misses us with an attack, we can make an attack against them. This combines really well with our sap, that if an enemy attacks us with disadvantage, they miss against our super high AC, we get to make an attack against them, it does extra damage and reapplies the sap property, so then on their next attack, if they have one, it has disadvantage. So it makes our disadvantage much more potent and it makes our AC that much higher by comparison. Looking at feats for this build, because fighters do get a lot of feats, the first one I'm looking at is Mage Slayer. Mage Slayer I see as almost a must in those first couple levels of fighter because it is going to help with our saving throws. Because strength is our only ability, our saving throws really suck, and this is a way to help mitigate that, giving us a once per day, basically legendary resistance on any mental saving throw. This is nearly a must for this build. The second one I'm looking at, which would be level 6, is going to be Heavy Armor Master. This makes our HP last that much longer by decreasing the damage we take from bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing attacks. And the third one I'm looking at is Shield Master. Shield Master gives us a shield bash, allowing us to knock our enemies prone, allowing us to keep our enemies close to us, which is great for a defensive build, acting as a team tank. The second thing that this is great for is that it gives us a slight boost to our dex saves. Now dex saves, it's not the most critical if we fail them. However, if we can succeed, it helps us to lose a little bit less HP and make that go that much further. This super AC tank side of the strength one stat wonder I really enjoy. I think it is a fairly straightforward build, but it has a lot going for it, especially once you get those Battle Master maneuvers. I think this one would be really fun to play, and it would come across as a pretty good tank even though you have the lower HP. Now the second build I want to look at is what I'm calling the Glass Cannon Strength one stat wonder. This one is going to be much more like a barbarian. Its goal is to run up into melee, do as much damage as it can, but it will probably go down fairly quickly. For this build, we are going to just use a big weapon and go for raw damage. I would take Great Axe and Great Sword probably as my two weapons of choice, using the Cleave or the Graze properties to whichever one is going to fit us best. Graze is more consistent damage, Cleave is more big damage when you have enemies bunched up. Eventually though, we are going to switch from the Great Sword and the Great Axe to the Glaive and the Halberd, so eventually we will want to switch our weapon masteries to those, but the weapon properties are the same, Cleave and Graze. This build is also going to use heavy armor, though we won't be using a shield, so our AC is going to be quite a bit lower, and we're not going to take the defense fighting style, we are going to take the great weapon fighting style, which is going to up our damage that much more. This means compared to the other build that had a 21 AC as its cap, we are sitting at an 18 AC as our cap, and we have basically no defensive benefits, so we are quite a bit lower there. At level 3, we could go into Champion, we could also go into Battle Master. I think either one will work great for this build. I am going to go into Battle Master because I think the maneuvers give us a little bit more versatility to give a little more depth into this build. The first one I'm looking at is Menacing. This allows us to be a little bit more tanky, but it also allows us to 1v1 against people a little bit better, and I also like that we are a menacing person, so having a menacing attack just makes sense to me. The second one I'm looking at is Precision Attack. This one is great for making sure our big attacks land. Sweeping Attack is great for if we can get two enemies bunched up together. Similar to the Cleave property, it's just an extra way to make an additional attack on our turn. And the last one I'm looking at is Trip Attack, which is great for knocking an enemy prone, giving us advantage on the attack. For feats, the only one that is the same as the last build is Mage Slayer. I see this one as a priority to be taken at level 4, that we get to mitigate our save weakness by that much for just a feat. At level 6, I am going to pick up Polearm Master. Polearm Master gives us a consistent bonus action attack using our polearm, and it does good damage, especially with our high strength modifier, it's going to do good damage. And with the reach property, it helps us keep ourselves maybe a little bit more safe if we can play a hit and run style, which helps our offense last a little bit longer before we get knocked out. At level 8, then I'm going to go into Great Weapon Master, giving us just that much more damage. And then when we get a crit or we knock an enemy to 0 hit points, then we can use our big attack instead of our pommel strike as our bonus action attack, giving us just a little bit extra damage there. Two things that I think both of these builds benefit from is the new feature in 2024 called Tactical Mind. This allows us to add our D10 second wind dice to skill checks that we make. So this is great for out of combat, allowing these strength only builds to do more outside of combat. I think this is a great addition there. The other feature that's great for both of these builds is Indomitable. I talked about how important Mage Slayer is on these builds, and Indomitable is just Mage Slayer plus. It just gives us that much more on these builds. Just a great feature, and a build that is indexed so heavy on strength really needs a feature like Indomitable to keep up, especially those later levels. That is 2 directions you could take your strength 1-stat wonder. How would you do this build, and what would you change about it? What would you do to make this strength 1-stat wonder shine a bit more brightly? And also, did you like more the defensive option or the offensive option? Let us know in the comments down below. And with that, we'll see you on our next video in this series where we're going to be breaking down the Dex 1-stat wonder. See you then.